everybody. So today we're going to be reacting to the IGN interview with Todd Howard and Jonathan Nolan. All right, this is regarding the Fallout TV show. The interview was brought to my attention through Maddie Plays, probably the biggest Fallout YouTuber on the platform. If you guys don't know Maddie Plays, look him up. He's been doing it for over 13 years now, I think. But what we're going to do is we're going to just watch this video. We're going to react to the things they say. I think a lot of it's regarding speculation on the TV show. Maddie Plays was saying that there are some things that they discuss that are almost a little invasive, that are almost forcing them to reveal things about season 2 instead of just allowing us to speculate. So I wanted to go into that and see exactly what they say, and I'll be giving some of my opinions. If you don't like that, well, go watch the video yourself. Also, this video is 24 minutes long, so as I pause and watch it, we will probably be reaching the 30-minute mark. We're not going to watch the whole video, but we will watch most of it. If you guys want to finish it, you can watch it on your own.
Fallout Season 1 is now on Prime Video, and in honor of that, I am joined by none other than Bethesda's Todd Howard, who is an executive producer on the show, and Jonathan Nolan, who is an executive producer.
Which, right off the bat, it's a really good thing that Todd Howard was actually involved in the making of this show. I mean, for example, the Amazon Lord of the Rings TV show, they refused to have Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, in the making of the show at all, even though he's like the lore master right now.
And director of the first 3 episodes. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, excited to be here.
And I'm so glad we get to talk now, post-release, because I feel like people have been binging it over the weekend and discussing it in earnest. Do you guys keep up with the reactions and reviews and fan theories, or are you kind of purposely staying out of that a little bit?
I mean, I keep up with it. You know, it's hard not to read all that
Yeah.
stuff, and everybody's loving the show. So when you're getting all this great feedback, it's pretty much, you know, it's a lot of fuel.
I think our speculation can help them speculate as well. Like, just because they're the owners of the IP doesn't mean, you know, the lore is all completed. It's all said and done. Like, and I think a big part of what is happening with this show is fans are looking at certain lore changes or certain additions that the show brings along, and they're thinking that it's just going to wipe the entire past away. But that might not actually be the case, you know. It's just adding new technology to a pool of, you know, pre-existing technology. It's just adding new design elements to pre-existing design elements. It doesn't just take away the pre-existing design elements. And in fact, the fact that they're adding new things gives us the opportunity to speculate more so on pre-existing things, pre-existing, you know, issues that we might not have been able to solve before. Now that we have the new technology or new details to the show and to the lore, we can actually revisit old speculations, which I think is a good thing. People are looking at it as if it's like taking away, but all this does is add.
Credit to Jonah, Graham, Geneva, everyone who worked on the show. It just turned out, you know, we're so happy.
Jonah, I'm curious with you too, because I don't know if you like got burned out on Reddit theories during Westworld or what have you.
You want to get it. It's always gratifying when people are enjoying something. That's really exciting. But I think you have to be a little careful, because if you read too much, you know, it can even subconsciously start to steer the ship a little bit.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I think he was touching on, and I think Maddie B even mentioned this, that Jonathan was pretty much not looking to please everyone. He wasn't looking to just, you know, make a show for other people to please other people's issues, because you're not going to please everyone. It's going to be impossible. He wanted to make a good Fallout show for him that he thought would be a fun show that Fallout fans would enjoy, and because he's a Fallout fan, now that he's played all of them, he wanted to kind of incorporate aspects of all the Fallout games that he played and enjoyed, and just put it into the show and make a good story out of it. Not necessarily, you know, a Fallout universe or Fallout game about it, but he just wanted to make a really good story that everybody could enjoy, even people that aren't part of the Fallout fandom. People who are just entering the Fallout fandom can enjoy this story. And then Fallout fans who already are part of the fandom are going to have things sprinkled in there for them that they're going to enjoy and you know, have referenced from their favorite games. And you can even see that in a lot of the dialogue writing, a lot of the script writing. They have funny little quips that only Fallout fans would get if they already knew the lore. So I think they handled this very well. And you can't really focus too much on other people's opinions, because other people's opinions are just going to bring the show down. You can't please everybody.
So I think I've dipped a toe in it, and everyone seems to be excited, which is great. That's very gratifying.
Yeah, well, I'll probably be the 1000th person to tell you.
She looks badass in that picture, in that
It's
video.
great. I watched the whole thing. And Jonah, you've talked about how you're a big Fallout 3 guy. Can I
Me
kind
too.
of ask you for your history with the series? Like, when did you start playing? How many hours have you lost to this series?
Started Fallout 3 shortly after it was released, which I think is 2008. I wouldn't feel good about putting a number on exactly how many hours I played.
Yeah,
But it was a lot.
at
It's a big
least
game,
2,000 for
It's a
me.
Bethesda game, so. And Todd, you've talked about how you said no for years to a Fallout adaptation until Jonah came along with his pitch. Now that we can actually talk spoilers and talk details, I'm curious if there was any like specific detail or specific hook in Jonah's pitch that made you think, oh, this guy gets it.
Well, when we first talked, I was such a fan
It's a
of
good
the work
question.
that he had done both in the movies and in television with Westworld. And when we first talked, it was, I wanted something that would stand up as another entry in the series as opposed to retelling one of the games we did and sort of treat it like we do a game.
It's kind of weird that he says that, because if that was true, they would have chosen a region of the wasteland that is completely unexplored. They wouldn't have chosen a region of the wasteland that already has a game. Los Angeles, Fallout 1 takes place in Los Angeles. And, well, I guess it doesn't take place in Los Angeles, but it takes place in California. The point I'm trying to make. If that was true, they would have just chose a state that nobody's been to yet, like fucking Idaho or Washington or something like that. But I guess I kind of see what he's going towards. It builds off of pre-existing lore, so in that sense, it's a new story. But if you're already taking story elements from the other games and running with them, it's not a completely new story.
Game and move the timeline forward and do some great things.
Yeah, so just move the timeline forward.
That's what he was thinking as well, which is like, hey, what's our ability to tell a new story? TV is about, finding the characters and how do we get the tone right in the show? So all of our initial conversations were around mostly tone, right? We know we're going to tell a new story, but I think the trick with Fallout is the world itself and how you go between all those different tones that the games have.
Right here, they forgot to add radiation storm in the background. Look at the sky. The sky looks way too blue and clean. There's no Fallout game that's ever been released that has a clean sky like that. I think that's just a small little nitpick I had that I wanted to mention, but there it is.
And I thought, the show does that really, really well.
Like, when it comes to setting tone, yes, it is very important, but I think it's those little things that create an uncanny valley feeling where it's like, yeah, we're in a wasteland settlement, and then you look at the sky and you're like, okay, this is a set for a movie or a TV show. You know what I mean? Like, they have to focus on these small little details to really immerse the viewer. And I hope my criticism isn't being taken as like, very harsh criticism. I very much enjoyed the show. I loved the show. These criticisms are actually just minor little things that they could do slightly better to make the show even better than it already is. All right, so don't think I'm hating. I'm just trying to give a candid opinion, a candid response.
Yeah, you definitely have that like kind of weird Fallout humor that is very specific to Fallout, so you definitely see that, along with like kind of the darkness of the world as well. And Todd, of course, you're coming to this as kind of like the lore master. I'm curious if when you went into the writer's room, if you had to correct a bunch of stuff, or were they already like...
That's what I called the, Christopher Tolkien, the lore master for Lord of the Rings TV show. So yes, like I said, it is important that Todd Howard, the owner of the IP, the lore master, is involved in this.
They knew their stuff when you came in.
They really knew their stuff, I'll tell you what. Everybody behind the show, it's one of the things that you wish people could see. Well, I think you see it in the show, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of the passion everybody involved in it brought to it. From Jonah to Graham and Geneva, our showrunners, the actors, the whole cast and crew. When you would go, I would ask people, like, are all TV show sets like this? Like, well, no, you see them all come together. And the people that were even, cameramen who were Fallout fans. And so obviously we were there from the beginning to help sort of guide, to make sure things were, in line tone-wise, and other little bits of fiction and other things. But they were so all over it and wanting to pull things from every game, from Fallout 1 to 3 to...
And there are things from every game. Fallout 1, Shady Sands, sure, they might have changed the location a little bit, but it's there. Fallout 76 is there. Like, if you guys heard the speculation, Fallout 76, the main objective of Vault 76 was to open up, reclaim the missile silos, and in my opinion, I think that was to reclaim the missile silos for Vault-Tec, for Bud's, to be able to access them and manage how the pre-war munitions would be used and allocated. And then they would use the Garden of Eden creation kit, which most likely contains cold fusion inside of it, to build over the ashes, build over the rubble of their enemies of the old wasteland to make the world for themselves, make it Eden for themselves.
Vegas to 4. There's even some 76 stuff in there, and I think it's one of the really wonderful things that it does if you're a fan of the series and everybody has kind of their favorite entry, that you can see bits and pieces of
that is true. They did a really good job sprinkling, like I said earlier in the video, sprinkling a little bit of everything of things from other games for everyone. Like, I'm a huge Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas fan, but you can even see aspects of Fallout 4. Like, and that's another thing I wanted to touch upon. As I was saying earlier, when they add lore to the game, it's not to take away lore from the other games. Look at the power armor here. Does that look like power armor from Fallout 3 and New Vegas to you? No, it doesn't. But does that mean that they went back and released a patch for Fallout 3 and New Vegas to change the armor design? No. Just because one thing is now new, one thing is now lore, doesn't mean all the other shit isn't canon anymore. It's still canon. It's just its own contained universe. Like I said, if one technology exists, that doesn't mean that now that this new technology is being released, it doesn't exist anymore. It still does. It's just adding to the pile, right? So we got to be chill. Gotta not be too strict on them, but at the same time, we do have to be a little nitpicky on our favorite beloved fandom here, our franchise.
And Jonah, this show takes some very large swings with Fallout lore, and you're no stranger to big IP. You've done Batman, obviously. But was there anything where you were like, is this too big a swing? Am I taking too much liberty with the lore here?
A little bit,
well,
sometimes,
you
maybe.
Approach it from a place of humility when you're dealing with, and this has been just a dream collaboration. I mean, the partnership with Todd and the rest of the amazing folks at Bethesda, and the support there, and the openness to our team with Geneva and Graham to be able to get in here and do some real storytelling. I think that the part that was the most exciting, but also the most nervous-making, were all of the flashbacks. And it was something that...
But the flashbacks served the show so well because everybody's interested in the pre-war aspect of this universe. How did things lead up to the wasteland? How did things lead up to complete devastation? And I think having a ghoul character does a fucking fantastic job of showing the pre-war with those flashbacks. It's something you can't really do in the games. But what it does do is it further hammers home the fact that fans have been longing to play as a ghoul. So in the next Fallout game, if they don't give us the option to play as a ghoul and experience a little bit of pre-war, there's going to be a little bit of an uproar, I think, because people have been calling for this for a long time. You can play a ghoul in Fallout Brotherhood, but that's not even a canon game. Nobody really even considers that a Fallout game. But there should be the ability to explore the pre-world a little more than we did in Fallout 4. The 10 minutes of character creation.
As we were talking about
Betty's in the background there. Cool.
Telling that story about what happened.
That's actually a really good continuation of the scene.
What precipitated the war? One little sliver of that larger story, and a little bit more of an insight in Vault-Tec. That was the place where I was both the most reliant on talking with Todd and the team over there a lot about, okay, let's make sure that we don't, that all of this fits together, plays nicely with all of the rest of the lore.
That's an important thing. Listen to what he just said. It all has to fit together with the lore. That means that they are completely conscious of the fact that any of these things that people might be wrestling with will be worked out in Season 2. Okay? They are conscious that it has to fit in.
Ability for the show, which is something a show you say, why even make a show out of a game? The game has so much flexibility. They're so big. They're so epic. There's so many choices you can make, and you're
it's because there's things you can do with a show you can't do with a game.
With the series, but the series can do things like flashbacks that are a little more challenging with the game. So that world before the war, which is so distinct, so satirical, so it's so much of the flavor of these games, and the ability to play in that, I think, was incredibly exciting to us.
And they did a good job.
Given that this show is telling kind of an original story, but it's still so loyal to the world of the games, I mean, was there any pushback on making a show that was extremely loyal to the lore and art design of the games?
I'd say every time we do a game, we want to push the story forward as well.
Yeah.
We're looking at things and how do we add. And so the show does that as well. As they had story elements that they wanted to do, it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Let's find a way to make that work. You know,
They
Graham
keep
and Geneva
adding.
wanted to
Notice
blow
how
up
they
Shady
don't take
Sands.
anything
The first time
away.
they bring that up, you're like, what do you want to do?
You wanted to blow up Shady Sands.
I need to I actually had an emotional reaction to it given the history of that location in the franchise from Fallout 1, and we talked through
It's like
it.
the first town you come
a pretty
across.
impactful story moment that a lot of things anchor on. So making that work, and just so people here I know are watching this, like, we're careful about the timeline. There might be a little bit of confusion in some places, but everything that happened in the previous games, including New Vegas, happened. We're very
Yeah, the show takes place slightly after New Vegas. And I think they'll confirm that in this interview, but that's what most fans are starting to come to the conclusion of.
careful about that. And so when they brought that up, threading that needle to make sure that that was a moment that landed in the show.
Right here, Shady Sands is right next to a big metropolis, a big city. In Fallout 1, when you first come across Shady Sands and you're going through the map to get to the vault that you're told to get to retrieve the Gek, Shady Sands is nowhere near a big metropolis. Obviously the technology is a little old and maybe they had trouble rendering what they were trying to render, but from what I remember, and I just played it a couple weeks ago, there's like 4 sandstone shacks with maybe 20 people living in them in the town. So with modern rendering and technology, that would probably translate to like 10 shacks with maybe 100 people living in the town. So the size looks relatively reasonable, but the fact that it's near a metropolis makes me wonder, why even build the settlement? Why not just reinforce one of these skyscrapers like Tenpenny did or something? But I think that has to do with the fact that they moved the location of Shady Sands a little bit, and I think we'll get into that a little bit, possibly, maybe. We'll see.
That also moved things forward in terms of.
I was actually.
That also
Sorry, guys.
moved things forward in terms of what's going to be happening in the world of Fallout. That was a big one that we talked about.
Well, I was actually specifically going to ask you about that Shady Sands timeline conversation, and you say that, nothing in New Vegas is retconned.
Yeah.
I think the rub to kind of TLDR it is that the fall, quote unquote, of Shady Sands happens in 2277, which is 4 years before New Vegas.
But we don't know what the fall means.
So is that just like, are people just misunderstanding what the fall of Shady Sands means, or like anything like that?
All I could say is we're threading it tight there, but the bomb falls just after the events of New Vegas.
I don't know if you guys hear that, but my dad just decided to do a smoothie.
So basically the fall of Shady Sands, it doesn't mean a nuke necessarily.
Correct.
I'm glad we got that out of the way, because it was a big question.
We are tight on the dates, if you really want to get into it. But what's important is when the show takes place, what is happening in the time period of the show, and that's what's most important to us.
Absolutely, and that kind of brings me to this question of, you could have made this show in a way that, say, the MCU does, where the movies are separate from the comics. Why make it intertwined with the lore of the games?
Well, it definitely is harder to do, right?
Yeah.
We just felt, as fans of Fallout, that would be...
But it would definitely add to it, because you don't want to make like a standalone universe for Fallout that has nothing to do with the other Fallout, universe that you've already established. At that point, might as well just make a new TV show that's not based on the Fallout IP. So yeah, it can be a challenge, but at the same time, it gives you so much to work off of from a pre-existing foundation, so...
the kind of show we'd want to watch, and the things where we think the world of Fallout is going in the future. And it's also, look, for me, I can't say enough about the job Jonah and the whole team did on this, in terms of, I love to work with other creatives that are going to bring a lot of new things to it. And as Jonah was referencing, what they were able to do in the past and Vault-Tec, and there's even more. I just thought, look, as a fan of Fallout, it was an absolute delight.
From our end, we had seen the care with which Todd and the team at Bethesda had made sure that all of these games connect together. Everyone worked on Fallout, all the games.
When he says connect together, the only way that they can connect together is if they decide canon endings for some of the other titles. For example, in the ending of the show, we see the Pridwin and the East Coast Brotherhood coming to assist the West Coast Brotherhood. That pretty much guarantees that either the Minutemen or the Brotherhood is the canon ending to Fallout 4. So they do have to be a little bit careful about, threading it all together, but at the same time, so far they have been. So, and I don't think anyone's really upset with the Brotherhood or the Minutemen being the canon endings. I think we're all pretty much aware of that, subconsciously anyway. Like the Institute's not going to win, right? Even if you like, I went with the Institute the first playthrough. Don't get me wrong, but does it work with the story? Does it work with the lore? Not really.
We're so respectful and so careful to keep this consistent universe. If we gone a different direction, the show would be the only thing that doesn't fit with that universe. Now, obviously, there's challenges there. These are open world games in which some of the games have, the games all have different endings, different outcomes, and you have to find a way to honor those. But we didn't want to be in our own little private corner of an Elseworld or a different universe. That felt like, I think that would be less meaningful to me watching the series, to know that it was completely divorced from the real.
So that kind of answers what I was talking about before. Like when Todd Howard says we want a completely new story, and I said, well, that's not really a completely new story if you're building off of pre-existing elements. Here's Jonathan saying, actually, it is good to have some pre-existing elements in order to create a new story off of pre-existing elements in a in a pre-established area. So, I mean, there's different schools of thought to it, of course. But I agree with him in a lot of ways. I also mildly disagree in some ways. But so far, we're good with their direction and how serious they've been taking the show and the pre-existing lore.
Reality of the games.
From what I have heard from you guys, though, it's more so that being intertwined in the universe is more of an asset than an obstacle. Am I right?
I think it's definitely more of an asset. It is a challenge. I mean, as Todd said, it'd be much easier for us to just kind of like a bull in a china shop, just go in here and pick whatever we wanted. And I've worked on adaptations before where they're defined by the degrees of difference from the source material.
This guy has a camera like me.
When you're adapting, for instance, Westworld, the original brilliant film by Michael Crichton. I mean, the series shares the ethos of that film, but very few of the sort of story moments. Sometimes it's about making changes. Sometimes, and it's always more difficult to thread that needle of respecting all of the lore, respecting all the great storytelling that's come before you, and trying to find a way to not only play nicely with that, but also add to it if you can. So, like I said, just a dream collaboration.
Once again, hammering down, not taking anything away, only adding to it.
I want to dive into kind of this main trio of characters of Lucy, Maximus, and Ghoul or Cooper.
Kind of like how they are neutral, evil, or good playstyles. That's probably what she's getting into, the karma. Everyone's already kind of realized that. But my only question is, does that mean that we are saying that the karma system works kind of the way Fallout 3's karma system works, where it's good, bad, or neutral? Or is the neutrality working in the sense that Fallout New Vegas neutrality works, where it's, multifaceted, faction-based karma? I'd like to see if they can delve into that a little bit further, because I think the multifaceted faction-based neutrality just makes more sense. It just works better, especially with the TV show, because you're already seeing Lucy now that she's made certain decisions she's made. She might have, low karma in Philly, which doesn't really matter anymore because the town's been destroyed, but she might have neutral karma with her vault now, because if her dad spreads lies, or Betty spreads lies about her, that could make her look bad in the vault. It depends on what they know. So it'd be really nice to explore that multifaceted karma system. And I think we'll get into that.
And we'll start with Lucy.
Because
I
the Ghoul isn't just strictly
how
bad.
She is this very optimistic
He does some good
character,
things.
and you kind of expect throughout season 1 for her to take
Which is
a
good.
turn.
I like how they show that humanity's complicated. It's not just cut and dry, good or bad. Like, there's gray area in everything here in the Wasteland, which makes it even more believable. It's a real story when you get human aspects, not just perfect archetypes.
But she never does. Like, she gets tougher, but she still remains essentially the Leslie Knope of the Wasteland. I'm curious if that was always the idea, or if there was ever, a thought where she might get a little more cynical.
I think it's one of the things that we really enjoyed about Geneva and Graham's pitch for these characters from the beginning, was that there would be the ability to grow, and I think change is always a possibility there, but there would be certain things that these characters would really hold on to, sort of essential pieces of their character.
Yeah.
I think Lucy is essentially such a likable character, in part because her idealism is kind of unchallenged when it starts, and then as the story continues, you see what are the things that in this kind of in the crucible of the Wasteland, what's she going to discard and what's she going to hold on to? And her essential decency is something that I think, even when she's tasked with making some very difficult choices, even when she's tasked with taking a life, I think you still feel that decency underneath it. I think that was a really exciting choice.
Yeah, like how
Yeah.
she calculated whether or not she should execute her mother, who's a ghoul. You could see the thinking in her eyes, the thought. I went back and rewinded and rewatched that scene a couple times just to really see how the actress portrayed the emotions. I haven't seen my mom. She's been lost. She's been dead to me for my whole life, and now I finally see her, and I have to put her out of her misery. Like what a scene.
And she really goes through it throughout season 1, and I think you have this big reveal, of course, that about her father, Hank. I mean, is he basically our big bad now?
That's an invasive question. Don't answer that. Is he our big bad now? You can't give us details about season 2. Bruh. Chill. Let's speculate and wait a couple months like we've done for every other Fallout installment.
Stay tuned and see. And we love
Thank
working
you.
with Kyle MacLachlan. What a treasure that guy is.
God, he's so good. And moving on, I saw a take that was the 3 characters are kind of perfect embodiments of the D&D alignment chart. Like Lucy is
Yeah,
good,
so she's getting
Maximus is
into that,
neutral,
yeah.
and Ghoul is evil. And I really love thinking about Maximus as neutral because a lot of his choices I feel come from just naivete.
A lot of his choices are pretty much based on how people play Fallout games. You join the Brotherhood because you want armor and a big nice gun, but you don't really agree with the Brotherhood. You don't really care about what they have to say. You just want their technology, Or, for example, when he steals the power core from the hospital vault, it's not that he's doing it because he hates them. He's doing it because he wants more fuel for his armor. His armor won't work without it. So it's like he's very survival and wasteland focused, not very focused on, interpersonal connections, because he's treating it like he's playing a game, like he's living in a game world where nobody really matters, just, the character, the progression of himself, which is a very nihilistic way to look, but that's how people play games. Nobody plays games, trying to, worry about gods not going to smite them. This isn't real life. If you steal from somebody in a video game, it's not like God in real life's going to smite you, all right? So I think that's more so the archetype of Maximus, at least for me. I relate to him a lot more as a player, but I relate to Lucy a lot more as a person. So there's good multifaceted aspects of their characters here. And the Ghoul, don't get me wrong, he's still my favorite character out of all 3, even though I don't relate to him. He's the coolest, he has the coolest lines, and I want to get into actually explaining some stuff about the Ghoul that I thought about in just a minute.
What are you kind of trying to say about the Brotherhood of Steel as an organization through this character?
For me, I just remember that moment where they offer to let you join up. Kind of go, I'm not quite sure what are we in like a Paul Verhoeven Starship Troopers kind of moment here? Like, do we feel good about this organization or bad? I mean, the helmet looks cool. You want to wear that armor, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think for me, Max really represents my experience playing these games, where I'd like to think that I play through it with Lucy's moral virtue, but the truth is there's some moments where you just want the big gun.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes,
you're
he
trying
gets
to figure
it.
out how much you're willing to morally compromise yourself. I think Aaron Moten just did such an incredible job of portraying that neutrality, that kind of that ambiguity of which way he's going to go.
You can always see him warring with
himself.
himself.
Look, you see it. You see these guys when the airship comes and they come walking out. It's just like
That's what I'm talking about. The Pridwin confirms that the Fallout 4 ending.
It's completely badass. I mean, there's no other word to be like, I want to be post-apocalyptic Iron Man tank. And then, how compromised morally am I going to be? Who are they out for? And I really love a lot of the scenes where, them teaching technology or how they treat squires. The thing I definitely want to borrow is I love the solve for how all of these weapons are carried around with the giant golf bag.
I find that hilarious.
So if I had like a wish, you'd see that in the game like 76 really soon. But there's so
That's
many
great,
great parts about the Brotherhood of Steel in terms of what the Wasteland can mean. And so I think Max often is the player.
And I think I like how they touched upon how, how valuable squires are and clerics are, and like kind of like the roles that they play in the Brotherhood. A lot of people are like, why are they almost going into like Warhammer style tech priest clerics? You know what I mean? Where they like worship the technology gods or whatever. But I don't know. It gives them a little bit more personality, a little more flair, and I don't think they're going fully into that religiosity aspect. But I think what they're trying to show is why the Brotherhood values these artifacts so much and why it's important that they have them and nobody else has them. It's because they believe in the truth, the true religion or whatever, the true ideology of how to deal with the Wasteland, and everybody else is a savage that doesn't believe in the truth. The same thing as like the Nellis Air Force Base, right? Why do they deserve a bomber and nobody else? Well, because the Lady of the Sky was gifted to them, right? So they all have their own weird ideologies surrounding how to control what goes on in the wasteland.
Would I have done that? Is he making the right choices? So, and I think Aaron pulls it off great.
He does. He absolutely
Yeah,
does.
he does,
And I also
yeah.
find the dynamic between Lucy and Max to be so
All the
interesting.
actors are
I mean,
great.
in your guys' opinion, are they like actually in love by the end of season 1, or is it essentially like a marriage of convenience? Like, you're here, I'm here. Why don't we love each other?
No, I don't think it's a marriage of convenience. I think there's a genuine bond there.
They come from genuinely incredibly different backgrounds. I think it's actually incredibly inconvenient, their relationship.
Their backgrounds are so different, and yet they've found this space in between where they relate. No, I think there's a very genuine level of connection there. I just, in the way of all things, there's a little bit of comedy, there's a little bit of tragedy in the show. So we'll see if they can find each other again.
Speaking
Yeah.
of tragedy, I think we have to talk about Walton Goggins and Ghoul, who has just been a breakout character without a doubt. First of all, the most obvious question is Cooper Howard named after Todd?
No comment.
No
Fair enough.
comment.
And I think one of the coolest lore reveals is that he's kind of Vault Boy, or at least Vault Boy is based on advertisements that Coop
Yeah,
did.
I think it all kind of happened
is that
all
kind
at
of where the
once.
character started?
We had conversations with Graham and Geneva and Todd talking about that lore and backing into it. We just love the idea of Cooper. When we knew the show was set in Los Angeles and the kind of ruins of Hollywood, the idea of Cooper as this figure embroiled in a kind of a Red Scare McCarthy-like moment in this.
It's kind of like a three-way explanation too, where the thumbs up, not only do they confirm the fan theory that yes, it has to do with the measuring out the mushroom cloud, but also it has to do with just like it also confirms the fact that it was just a lucky accident. He was just doing a thumbs up, but then it later became the meaning of the bombs falling, and because he was a former Marine, he was able to explain that meaning to his daughter.
Bizarro alternate future was kind of too delicious for us to pass out, because here we are, again, the Hollywood assholes coming to adapt this beloved video game franchise. So there was a meta satirical level that we just thought was delicious, and then of course this question of how far is too far in terms of actors or writers or anyone in terms of that corporate sponsorship, sort of going down that rabbit hole. So
Selling your soul
I
for
think
money. Yeah.
picking up the mantle of the satire from the games and trying to direct it back towards Vault Tech.
But I don't think he really knew he was selling his soul. He was very naive. Also, I wanted to touch upon a little bit of that towards that birthday scene we just saw. It almost confirms that Vault Tech didn't actually go through with dropping the bombs. Because if they did, why on earth would Betty, Howard's wife, have allowed her husband and her daughter to be at a birthday party while the bombs fell? That would be the last place they'd be. They would be in a shelter with her, right? You'd imagine. Also, there is a talk about Howard and his wife possibly having a divorce, because there's a little mention of alimony. The reason he's doing children's birthday parties is for alimony payments. So maybe they have a divorce or a breakup following what he discovers by listening in on her in the last season. But even so, she wouldn't let her daughter become a victim to the wasteland just because of that. So I think it proves that they weren't ready. None of the vaults were fully built. Like, very few of them were actually fully completed. They were all halfway done. And on top of that, Mr. House, if he was there and knowing what Vault Tech was planning to do, drop the bombs when they were planning on dropping them, he would have been ready as well. He would have had his platinum chip already. He would have been fully able to make Vegas the perfect wasteland capital that he wanted. But he wasn't ready either. None of them were. Because I think the Russians and the Chinese moved a little bit faster than any of those incredibly rich capitalistic cabal elites were expecting them to move. And they also, China and Russia, they were speccing into technology that was completely different than the technology that America was speccing into at the time. And I think Chinese technology of being very sneaky might have been able to kind of like send invisible nukes in, or like, get through the missile defense system of America, and that's probably what caught them all off guard. Like a stealth boy nuke, could you imagine?
Got a chance to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coop is a great way to do that. And I'm curious, like, what kind of balance was there in kind of the, I would say, more morally compromised Ghoul that we see, and trying to also hold on to who Coop was 200 years ago?
It's an ongoing story. I think that's what one
Yeah,
of the things that's so fascinating about this character is he's seen the whole story, and you so seldom get a chance to to write a character with this kind of span where in flashbacks you're looking at someone who I think from the first frame you understand is decent. He makes some
yeah,
mistakes
he's a
and
good
he's
guy,
certainly got
but he's
he,
weathered.
he he learns some things along
He
the way.
has
But I think we
weathered the
understand from
storm.
his first interactions with his daughter this is an inherently decent person, and then we
Yeah,
see what the rack of time has done to him, and it creates this chasm between who he was and who he is. And I think it's just a fascinating thing for the show
that's
to
why he's
explore.
such an
By the time you get to
interesting
the end of the
character.
season, you understand this is a person who's capable of evil, capable of ruthlessness, has seen enough life come and go that life is truly cheap to him. But I think there is still a question of what drives this. What is driving this person? What has been driving this person
Finding
through
his
hundreds of
family.
years?
Absolutely, and you kind of have this great
Like
line.
the ghoul is such an awesome idea for a character for a gameplay arc. Like, could you imagine playing as the ghoul and you're spending all of your time trying to find your lost family from before the bombs fell? Like, that's the game. And imagine there's no happy ending. Imagine when you finally find out where your family is, they've been dead this whole time. That is an idea for a Vault game or a Fallout game that I think would be fantastic.
Line drop in the finale with both Barb and Coop saying war never changes. Was it important for you guys to have that line in there in a prominent role, given that it's kind of in certain ways the ethos of Fallout?
It's kind of good they did it at the end because every other Fallout game does it at the beginning where they kind of pre-establish the lore and where you are in the game. But the fact that the show kind of starts in the pre-war and throughout the entire show talks about the pre-war leading up to the war, the Wasteland, it's kind of good that they actually waited to do it at the end, almost as if the first season was a prequel and the second season is going to be kind of like the start of a Fallout game. But the first season, I mean, if you're looking at it in the type of as if it's a game instead of a show. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, but hopefully you guys do. I think we're going to be done with the video pretty soon here, though.
Graham is an even bigger fan of Fallout. I wouldn't say a bigger fan, but a longer standing fan. He's been playing since the very first game, and
That's good.
so
You want
we talked.
big fans.
They talk. Graham and Janino talk endlessly about the right moment for that line to land. I think a lot of people would expect to see it in the very beginning of the series. I love the way they kind of Casino Royale it. They sort of, and one of the beauties of that film is that you wait the whole film to hear that distinctive John Barry guitar sting that announces that that Bond has begun. I think there's an opportunity to take that line and use it to kind of plant a flag here that hopefully our story has just begun as well.
Staying on the subject of Coop, you have this huge reveal in the finale that Barb kind of betrayed him. And from my perspective, it's a pretty evil decision. She was one of the architects of the nuking.
We don't know that for
are we
sure.
gonna get an answer for that? About is there going to be some kind of justification?
Wait for season 2, woman!
I don't know if you'd say there's a justification, but we're very much hoping to continue telling that story. That's going to be my answer for all these questions. I wish Graham and Geneva were here.
because you're starting to
They would
get
say the same thing.
invasive.
Again, those flashbacks, that storytelling, those characters, those actors was so much fun for us that I think if we're lucky enough to continue telling the story, that will definitely be a part of it.
And I'm curious how you guys see the NCR as it stands now. Like, is it?
A lot of people are taking this show to mean that the NCR is gone, like that was all of it and it's now all gone, like Moldaver was the last of the NCR. No. It's hard to communicate throughout the Wasteland. There are contingencies all over the place. There are Brotherhood contingencies that literally don't communicate with each other. They have gone years without communication because you can't. It's impossible. It's the Wasteland. That's just one contingent, and I think it's a contingent that specifically was okay with hiring fiends to work for them. You can see that in episode 1 where the NCR soldiers are fiendish. They don't have table manners. They're crazy. But Moldaver wasn't concerned with who she was hiring. She just needed men and women to inflate her numbers so that she could do what she needed to do to complete her research from the pre-war. Another thing, how did Moldaver survive over 200 years? She might be a cybernetic enhanced human, kind of like Kellogg, and we can get into that.
Demolished, or is it kind of more?
But
like
right now
the
it's all
Minutemen, where
speculation.
It's just kind of fractured.
We can't force them to answer these questions. We got to wait for season 2.
The takes that we always have is to approach things very locally when we're doing Fallout. We're careful about saying what's going on in other parts of the world, and we always take this view of like communication is difficult. And look, if you look at the background, the NCR is a wide-ranging sort of organization and
they're
group
huge.
across not just California but other places. So the show focuses on this period of time and this group here, and that's what we could say right
Good
now.
answer.
I don't think you've heard the last of the NCR.
Good
Absolutely,
to know.
and I'm
Okay.
sure
Well,
we
even
haven't
that's a
heard-
little bit of a spoiler in the answer there.
Last of Moldaver, again, question that will probably be answered in season 2. Are we going to find out why she's been around for so long? Because we didn't find that out in season 1.
We did not, did we? I think I would love to. I would love to spend a little more time. Yeah, Sharita's a lovely human being, fantastic actor, and I think
and her character is very interesting to a lot of people.
I'll take a break from grilling you guys about the lore and ask you about some of the BTS.
If you guys are interested in the BTS, feel free to go and finish the video. We're at 19 minutes and 43 seconds. We're going to end it here, though. I'm not too concerned with the BTS when we're talking speculation. But if you liked the video, please leave a like. If you disliked it, feel free to leave a dislike. And if you want to see more from me, talking about the Follow TV show, playing video games, whatever it is I decide to do on this platform, feel free to subscribe. Give a hit to that bell. But until next time, goodbye, everybody.